The metadata deployment arrow can be used to connect a developer project to a snapshot or just connect two snapshots. You can double-click any deployment arrow to move metadata from the source to the destination. So the first screen of the deployment interface will show you the source snapshot on the left and the destination snapshot on the right. You can look at all of the information about the source and the destination, and you can see here on the source snapshot that the setup audit trail is in red and was automatically selected for you. The reason for this is that this snapshot was taken, but after that some other changes were made by an administrator to some custom tabs. That's okay. You might still want to use this source snapshot, but you need to be aware that it's not up to date. Let's look at the destination. In the destination snapshot, we see that the deployment history is in red and was also pre-selected for you. What that means is that after this snapshot was taken, there were two other deployments by the snapshot product to this same org. We can also look at the setup audit trail and see that on the destination snapshot, many changes were made after this snapshot was taken. So on the destination, this is a little bit more of a serious problem because the destination snapshot is used to compare the source to the destination and see what the differences are. And it's also used to delete any objects that you want to select for deletion on the destination. So in this case, we're going to choose to take a destination snapshot and update this snapshot. And so now you'll see the interface refresh and the destination snapshot is completely up to date. Look at the deployment history. It's the most recent snapshot after any other deployments. Look at the setup audit trail. Same deal. There were changes in the past, but no changes have been made by an administrator after this snapshot was taken. So once you're happy with the state of the source and the destination snapshot, click the Next button and move to the Create Assets tab. Now here you're going to build up metadata types in a job list that you want to move from the source to the destination. You can select all of your different metadata types over here and move them over, whatever you need to move, and it'll build up the Create Job List. You can also select items and move them back or move them all back. You can not only select the base types here, you can also select subtypes. So for example, let's select fields and we can see all of the different fields in the account object that we could choose to move. If a field or any other asset is in green, that means it exists on the source but not on the destination. And so if you move it, it'll be a non-destructive change to the destination org. If it's in red, that means it's different on the source and on the destination. And so if you move that, that'll be a destructive change. In other words, it's going to change something on the destination. If you see something that's this gray circle, that means it's the same on the source and on the destination. You can select any of these things and see what the actual differences are by sliding down the XML Differences tab. So for example, this field, a long number, has a precision of 18 on the source and a precision of 16 on the destination. So that's the change you'll be making. Look at a formula field, it exists on the source and not on the destination. Look at account flag here, you see it's identical on the source and the destination. So very intuitive, very powerful way to see what all of your differences are and changes are before you move them over into the Create Job List. Something else you can do is you can select any asset and choose this button, which is Add Related. So what this will do is add the account object over to the job list and any other metadata types that are related to account. And so just like that, you can see there's a lot of things related to account, contacts, matching rules, quick actions, various reports, sharing rules, workflows, page layouts. Everything that's related to the account object will be moved over into the create job list. Okay, one other thing I want to show you is you can select multiple types over here, and when you do that you get different buttons here, and now you have the option to move everything in those metadata type categories that are missing, different, or just all of the changes. So for example, if we choose different, we'll get account, activity, atom bar, things like that over here. If we choose missing, you'll get all of these custom settings, shared view. These items here will be moved over. So you can also right-click this list, select all of the base types, and move everything that's missing and everything that's different. And so this is a very powerful interface for building up the job list with just all of the differences between the source and the destination for whatever metadata types you want to select. Okay, so for my example today, let's keep it simple. I'm just going to move a couple of objects over. Let's move these two over. And I'm going to go ahead and click the Next tab, and we're going to go look at deleting assets. So the Delete Asset tab is very similar to Create Assets. The main difference is that Delete only looks at the destination objects available for deletion. It doesn't really have anything to do with the source snapshot. So you don't see all the differences here, for example. So again, let's look at some custom objects that we might want to delete and move those into the delete job list. So the way the metadata API works, it lets you delete some things first and then create some things with every transaction. So that's why the user interface is organized in this fashion. Okay, when you're satisfied about the objects you want to delete, you can click the Next button. Now, this interface here, the Deploy Metadata tab, is really the heart of the Snapshot product. It's a very powerful interface that lets you look at your create and your delete job lists and manage them, and then set up all the characteristics of your deployment, and then either deploy the metadata or create a package. So let's go through this step by step. So from this menu, we can copy the current job list, we can export it as a text file, we can import a text file and replace this current job list, or we can import a text file and merge it with this current job list. So this lets you take multiple job lists, perhaps from different administrators, and merge them into a single job for deployment. You can also search for job lists. So what this lets you do is search for job lists that have been used in the past and reuse them now, either replace the current job list or merge them into the current job list. So for example, I can search for all of the pushes that have ever occurred to this org, or only the successful pushes, or only the pushes that actually made changes to the org that were real deployments. And for any of these, I can see the different job lists that were used, the deployment results, and everything that was done. And then I can grab those and either import them or merge them into the current job list. I can also search for all of my pushes into any org. So, you look at the historical record of things I've done in the past, I can grab that information up and either import that or merge that into the current job list. And I can look for my successful pushes or also just the pushes of mine that actually made changes to a deployment. Okay, so once you've got the job list put together the way you want, then let's look here at the center console and all of the different options here. So this menu at top is very, very important. It really determines what operation you're going to do. So checking for errors without making changes is always a safe thing to do. This is a validating deployment. You can see that it's going to work and then perhaps do the actual deployment later in the middle of the night or something like that. The next option is to roll back all changes if there's an error. That's a transactional deployment. So that's the type of thing you would want to do with a production org where you want to either change a number of things, but if there's any problem, roll it back. And lastly, we've got partial deployments where you can change everything possible and ignore errors. This is the type of thing you'd like to do for a sandbox or for a developer account. It's not available for production orgs, and so that's why it's grayed out here today. After that, you can choose to ignore warnings, which might be appropriate for a sandbox but not a production org. You decide. You can manage your Apex tests that you want to run. This org doesn't have any Apex tests, but if you select them, then you can get code coverage for a production deployment. You can do transforms. So this is very useful. For example, if you have, if you're updating a bunch of reports, you might have a situation where the running user in the source snapshot is different than the running user in the destination snapshot. And so you could, change one username into another username right here. You can remove bad references. This lets you remove bad references from profiles, permission sets, page layouts, and object record types where, in the destination, there's a missing object or a missing tab or something that makes your deployment fail. So, this will clean up a profile, for example, if an object is missing in the destination. So the type of thing you might want to do for a sandbox or a developer account, you might or might not want to do this for production. You can decide. We can empty the recycle bin on delete. So if you're deleting objects, you can automatically empty the recycle bin. Very useful. And this option lets you deploy managed packages as unpackaged objects. So this is really useful for taking a managed package, putting it into a developer org as unpackaged assets, and then rebuilding the package. You can give your job a name, and you can give each push tags, and you can also have comments about the push. So this information fills out the custom objects that are created every time you do a push. So that's for compliance and for documentation of every push that's made with a snapshot, and also that's the source of the information for the deployment history that we saw back at the first tab. All right, so let's go ahead and try to do a production push and deploy some metadata. And now we can see that there were no errors. This object was deleted. These assets were changed. A couple of assets were unchanged. So now this is interesting. If you go back to the first tab, you will see that now your deployment history is, once again, this snapshot is not up to date. Why? Because we just made a later deployment right here that made it obsolete. So you could continue working. You could go right back to create, change your create job list, right back to delete, and then right back to deploy and deploy more metadata. Or you could choose to update that destination snapshot. It just depends on your workflow. Last thing I want to show you is you can schedule all of this. So for example, let's have a one-time event tomorrow night at 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's deploy metadata. And then after that, let's send the results in an email, no matter what, or only if it's an unsuccessful deployment. So you can schedule all of these deployments with Snapshot. It's very easy to do, but a very powerful interface. Okay, that's the deployment arrow.